Have you ever noticed how Gen X people rarely ask for help? They'll stay silent when they're stressed, work through pain, laugh at trauma, and somehow survive things that would mentally destroy other people. Because Gen X grew up in a world where emotional support was rare and independence wasn't a choice. It was survival. This generation became emotionally tough, sarcastic, private, and incredibly resilient. But behind that strength, there's also loneliness, emotional exhaustion, and years of unspoken pressure. And psychologically, that changes a person forever. Gen X is the generation born roughly between 1965 and 1980. They grew up before social media, before smartphones, before mental health conversations became normal. Many of them were called the forgotten generation, not because they were weak, but because nobody really checked on them. And today, we're going to break down the hidden psychology of Gen X, why they act emotionally different, why they value independence so much, why they struggle to open up emotionally, and why this generation became mentally tougher than most people realize. Gen X was raised during a massive cultural shift. More divorces, more working parents, less supervision. Millions of Gen X kids came home from school to empty houses. No parents waiting, no constant texting, no emotional check-ins. They made their own food, handled problems alone, and learned very early that nobody was coming to rescue them. Psychologically, this creates something powerful: hyperindependence. When a child repeatedly learns that emotional needs won't always be met, they stop depending on others emotionally. That's why many Gen X adults seem extremely self-reliant. But the downside, they often struggle to ask for help, even when they desperately need it. Because deep down, their brain learned, if I don't handle it myself, nobody will. One of the biggest psychological traits of Gen X is dark humor and sarcasm. They joke about stress, mock their own suffering, and laugh during difficult moments. But psychologically, humor is often a defense mechanism, especially for people who grew up emotionally unsupported. Humor creates emotional distance. Instead of saying, I'm overwhelmed, they joke. Instead of admitting sadness, they become sarcastic, because vulnerability didn't always feel safe for them. So many Gen X people became emotionally guarded, while appearing emotionally strong. And honestly, a lot of them became masters at pretending they're okay. Gen X grew up watching major systems disappoint people: political scandals, economic struggles, corporate layoffs, broken promises. So psychologically, many Gen X individuals developed skepticism. They don't easily trust authority. They question everything. And they often rely more on personal experience than public narratives. This generation became mentally wired to think, don't blindly trust anyone. That's why many Gen X people value practicality over trends. They usually care less about online validation and more about whether something actually works in real life. They became emotionally realistic, sometimes even cynical. But that cynicism often came from disappointment, not negativity. Here's the hidden psychological reality of Gen X. Many of them became emotionally isolated, not because they hate people, but because they learned emotional self-protection. A lot of Gen X adults were taught things like, stop crying, be strong, handle it yourself. And when emotions are repeatedly dismissed during childhood, people learn to suppress them. The problem is, suppressed emotions don't disappear. They stay inside the nervous system. That's why many Gen X people struggle with stress silently. They carry responsibilities quietly, pain quietly, exhaustion quietly, and most people around them never even notice. But despite all this, Gen X became incredibly resilient, because resilience often grows in environments where people are forced to adapt constantly. This generation learned how to survive uncertainty. They adapted to massive technological changes, economic shifts, cultural changes, and social transformation. They experienced both the old world and the digital world. And psychologically, that gave them flexibility. They know how to function without constant stimulation, without internet attention, without online approval. And that mental toughness is something younger generations sometimes underestimate. Gen X learned how to survive boredom, rejection, failure, and instability without broadcasting every emotion publicly. Gen X became the generation of silent endurance. Strong, independent, sarcastic, resilient, but often emotionally tired underneath. They learned to survive in a world that didn't always make emotional support easy. And maybe that's why they seem emotionally different today. Because some people don't become strong through comfort, they become strong through years of emotional adaptation. So the next time a Gen X person says, "I'm fine," there's a good chance they've been carrying far more than they ever talk about. If this video made you understand Gen X differently, subscribe for more deep psychology videos about human behavior, emotions, and hidden mental patterns.